Um, thank you. Recording's now in progress. And Tamika, is there any, I think we have some housekeeping things before we
Yep,
hop in.
absolutely. Dylan is going to post in the chat our agenda for today. Everybody has their name up, so I don't think we have to mention that. We're going to talk a little bit about just the structure of CNC. You hear it every time, but it's always good to remind you. I'm not going to show you the different materials on the CNC because at this point you should know where it is and how to navigate those resources. We're going to take a deeper dive in success planning. I know I think most of you were on the success planning session that we had, I think back in November or December. And so today we're just going to take a deeper dive and actually do a lot of practicing and role playing between you and another peer. So I'm super excited that it's a small group and we can have some really robust and thoughtful conversation. That's what these spaces are always about. But we did get feedback like people wanted a little bit more around success planning so that they can properly train in their learning team. So that's what we're going to work on today. We put together a guide as we always have. Rachel is going to show a video and she's going to talk through a couple things with us around just how our brains work and how we deal with stress and understanding motivators and values and things of that nature. And so we can apply it in today's session. Later on, again, we're going to continue to have those like practice activities and break out into different groups. As a reminder for the structure, when it comes to team captains and staff sessions, we're really going to focus, around coaching concepts, one or two corresponding co-correctional practices. We won't do that today just because we are going to spend majority of the time just practicing and role playing and talking around success planning and having those particular questions. Dylan has posted our guide for today in the chat for you to open, and it should be PDF fillable as well as we work through the guide. Last month and in January, you guys worked on celebrating success in your offices, and with your learning teams. And then in February, you worked on accountability and effective use of authority. So that's just a quick recap. And we'll continue to share our resources on the CNC. We will continue to be readily available to you. Our Gabriella will be back soon. Woo! Yay! We are excited to have her back. And she's doing well for those of you who know she is on maternity leave. And so we're excited to have her join us back in April. And so I will share this guide and turn it over to my girl, Rachel.
Thanks, Tamika. We'll wait to get that up on the screen. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm talking about.
This is true. No.
This is true.
Let me know when you want to share the video, okay?
Okay. So success planning really takes all the stuff we've been working on, like in our past CNC sessions, like how we build a coaching connection, how we assess folks, how we reinforce them, and really starts to bring it into focus of like, what do we do with people when we meet with them? And how you all as team captains can really help your staff think about how they can incorporate success planning into how they work with people. So the first thing I want to do is define what a success plan is and what the difference is between a case plan and a success plan. So we see a success plan as a person-centered, co-developed or co-created plan that helps people on supervision set and reach, I don't love the word goals, but we want to help people on their journey through supervision. And what that looks like is going to be very individualized based on the person. I think one thing our team is realizing as we dive like deeper into this is that we put a lot of accountability on ourselves to help people change in a very small, finite amount of time. And so I think what we really want to start thinking about is how we can start reframing how we see our time with the people we serve on supervision, and that we see it as a time that this is only a very small percentage of their life journey, right? Like we hope that the people we serve get to live out their life happy and healthily. And we work with them for this very small period of time, 2 years, 5 years. And so thinking about what we can actually accomplish alongside of people in that period of time of their journey. Whereas I think in the past, like, we're very, we have these conditions, we have to be focused on getting people through all these things the court has asked us to do, and that we're supposed to solve all of these problems within the 2 years we have them. And I think we just have to remind ourselves that, like, we're all a work in progress. We don't just, like, set a goal, we get there, and then it ends and we stop learning and growing, right? Like, it's a continuous process. And so really, we see success planning is taking a journey with someone. Case planning, at least how it's been used in the past, is we use a risk assessment. It spits out criminogenic needs, and it's the criminogenic needs are not really the strategies of how we approach it isn't very individualized. So, for example, if someone has a substance use disorder and, like, it spits out that they have a substance use disorder, how we handle that normally is pretty similar. We get the person evaluated, they go to treatment, they might go to some AA meetings or NA meetings. And it's like our actions are normally somewhat similar depending on what the criminogenic needs are. Whereas success planning is much more focused on the individual's journey and them creating small, very small action steps that are going to help them be the person they're trying to be. And again, we have to remember that that's not a linear process. Like, I want all of us to think about ourselves for a minute. Like, I'm sure we've all set a goal to do something. I know for me, I'm trying to lose weight. I work out all the time. So it's not the working out piece that's a struggle for me. It's actually the eating. Because I make excuses like, oh, I worked out today. I can eat whatever I want. And so if my desired self is to be healthier, I need to start thinking about every day my actions voting for who I'm trying to become. Like, that I'm voting and doing something that's going to help me become a healthier person overall. I know I have, like, the working out part down, but now I'm working on the eating, and there's different things and strategies that I can try. Some might work, some might not. And so I think it's this idea that we're on this journey. Now, I do want to highlight, and I'm going to play a quick video in a second. I think something else we have to remember specifically about the population we work with is a lot of the folks that we work with have experienced real trauma in their lives. And we have to remember how our brain works. So we're going to watch this quick video, but what I want you to keep in mind is that when people are in survival mode, in their fight or flight or freeze mode, they are in survival mode. And so when people are in survival mode, they're not worried about, like, we hear people say all the time, a lot of people I work with can't identify long-term goals. It's because they can't even think about tomorrow when they're just trying to survive today. And so, we also hear sometimes from people that work in the field, like, sometimes people don't have any intrinsic motivation. I would argue it's not that they don't have intrinsic motivation. They're probably operating in their survival part of their brain. And so they don't have capacity to be motivated to try to do something different because they're just trying to survive. So, Tamika, I'm going to have you play the quick video. I'm going to stop blabbering and we will watch it.
I want to make sure my sound is on for everyone before I play.
We cannot hear it.
I can't hear it either because I have
a fight, flight, or
Here we go.
Humans, like all species, have self-protective mechanisms to help us survive. Our fight, flight, or freeze survival response, the FFF for short, is designed to mobilize our brain and body to fight an enemy, run from an avalanche, or freeze to hide from a predator. Our brain sometimes misinterprets safe situations as dangerous and can set off false alarms. When the amygdala, our brain's watchdog, senses and barks danger, our body enters survival mode quicker than our rational mind can react, leaving it trying to figure out why we feel in mortal danger. When the FFF alarm is sounded, we start to breathe more quickly and shallow, causing hyperventilation, and our heart starts beating very fast. These changes can cause strong chest pain, which many people interpret as symptoms of a heart attack, when in fact it's just a result of the FFF activation, which can be relieved through breathing exercises. As a way of getting you ready for action, blood is diverted towards the major muscle groups. Blood flows away from our digestive system, causing the bladder to relax, and we might feel the need to pee. The mouth goes dry, nausea can occur, and we get the butterflies feeling in our stomach. Blood also rushes from extremities, leaving us with cold hands, but often sweaty palms as the action-ready body starts sweating to avoid overheating. Legs and hands can start trembling and feel weak, while tension starts building in big muscles like the thighs, neck, and shoulders. In our head, FFF alarms cause our brain to focus on negative memories, probably so it can scan them to avoid danger and negative outcomes. We get tunnel vision as our pupils dilate to increase our focus and long vision, but as a result, we lose our peripheral vision. FFF activation also reduces our ability to recognize differences in facial expressions. Too much oxygen and too little CO2 can result in dizziness or lightheadedness, which many people interpret as signs that they might faint. But because fainting is caused by a drastic drop in blood pressure, and because the FFF increases both our heart rate and blood pressure, it's nearly impossible to faint when this happens. Over time, depression, anxiety, and high levels of stress all harm the brain's ability to slow or cancel false FFF activations, causing them to happen more often. Knowing the symptoms of false activations makes it easier to recognize and reduce their effects. At Tankyboxen, you can learn both bottom-up and top-down techniques to reduce false FFF activation and bring your body back to balance.
Mika, can we stop sharing?
Absolutely.
So I'd love to hear from you, your thoughts on the video and thinking about the population we serve and how this, if people are in this kind of fight, flight, or freeze situation, how that can impact progress. What are your thoughts?
Well, when they're in the moment, that there's not a whole lot that you can help them with other than giving them suggestions on how to get out of, that state, like talking about the breathing and things like that. But, you're not going to have much success with them trying to, give you goals or things like that if they can't concentrate. So.
Right. So I think, Lori, like what you're saying, you have to kind of assess where they're at every time they come in, right? Because like one day they could be fine, but maybe something was triggering that did trigger, people kind of reliving some trauma or, these, again, like they were saying, like a lot of times there's like false triggers or something will trigger somebody and they don't know why, but it's really, because of past experiences and being able to identify that. And also thinking about just when you think about people's trust in law enforcement generally, or the system generally, there's a lot of distrust there anyway. And so you can imagine some of the maybe preconceived expectations or notions that people have before walking in the door, even about what they're about to experience because they see the system as unjust or unfair.
Yeah, and I'll say, I'm sorry. Was somebody else talking? Was that me?
No, it was me blabbing, but I would love to hear from you.
I'm sorry. I remember one time when I was supervising a person on supervision, and when you walked into the office, you had to be buzzed in, right? So you get buzzed in, and then when the door shut, it like clicks. So it sounded like a prison door shutting or like a door locking behind him. And so when he got to my office, you could just see he was upset. Like he was really upset. And he's usually a calm, laid back, come do what he needs to do and go on, right? And in that moment, I was like, hey, you're being, a little seem like aggressive, is everything okay? What's going on? He was like, literally, the door triggered me today. And it took me back to when I was incarcerated. And he showed up in that office and he ended up being vulnerable because we had that trusted relationship because I'd been working with him for a while. But it was in that moment that I knew that they're walking in these spaces with that trauma. And sometimes they will go into flight mode and in fear mode in your office, and you won't even know what's going on if you're not actively paying attention to them. And so that's why it's critically important to take a step back and do a check-in. Like every time, I know we're busy, we have a lot going on, but when it comes to a coaching perspective, that slowing it down for a moment is very important because that one thing, I could have said something and it could have triggered a whole different level of response, all because of that door closing and locking and reminding him of the day he was incarcerated, right? And I think that's what Rachel is trying to, just kind of show us when you're talking about success planning. It's an iterative process, but you gotta check in every time, and that's why success planning is a lot different from a case planning approach.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, the fact he was able to even express what it was, I do think sometimes people are triggered and they might not even be able to identify what it was that got them to that place of being uncomfortable, right? It could they might not even be able to express that to you. But I do think it's exactly that, like ensuring the coaching connection in every meeting and the assessing in every meeting to really see where people are at. Because I think sometimes we're so on autopilot, whether we're supervisors or officers, and it's like we have X, Y, and Z to do and all this checkboxing, but we forget we're actually there for them and meeting them where they are today at this moment. And knowing that sometimes when you see people, or even thinking about your own staff you supervise, maybe today they show up and they're only 30% today. Shit's going on at home, things are, they have a lot of other things on their mind. And then maybe the next day they're at 80% and they come in with a different attitude. And so I think it's just remembering from that coaching place that we are assessing and meeting people where they are in that moment, not in where we know they can be or think they should be given on we've done X, Y, and Z with them, but really just understanding that progress isn't linear and how we show up every day is not at the same percentage of productivity or the best that we can be every day. Any other thoughts or ideas before we hop back in? Don't all unmute at once. Okay. Tamika, I'm ready whenever you are.
Do you want me to slide or
let me just look at this because I probably didn't cover any of it.
you did?
I think, and we kind of just talked about this, but a success plan is something that should be, again, because we're on this journey, that is something we should be discussing and talking through every time we meet with people. And again, even with staff and their own development, thinking through, little changes and little things people can do to try to get to where they're trying to go in their life, whatever that looks like for that person. Okay, Tamika. You guys have this in your own workbook, so you can look through it because, like I said, I probably covered half of it. We're going to watch another video in a moment, but again, like I said, success planning is bringing everything we've been working on together. So that coaching connection, that relationship, that trust, the support, that is foundational to be able to move into success planning. And then that ongoing assessing and feedback that we were just talking about. So you might have X, Y, and Z you want to accomplish with your staff member, or that your staff member wants to accomplish with someone on supervision, but they walk in the door and they're at 30% today, and you got to step back and say, wait, we got to change plans. We got to pivot. Being able to give effective feedback when people are trying new strategies or new habits they're trying to implement to hear what went well. Were they able to track their habit 4 times out of the week? And like, how did that go? We also need to understand who people are trying to become. I think a lot of times, and it does say goals in here, I don't love the word goals because, again, I think it means that there's an end date and like we all can keep improving. You know, I think about goals like in terms of like, I want to run a marathon. And it's like, if you want to run a marathon, you have to do a lot of training to be able to get to run that amount of time. I mean, even if I trained every day, I don't think I could ever do it because I'm not a runner, but you think about marathon runners, they have a schedule. They start at 2 miles. The next day they do 5, back down to 1. And they train their body to be able to do that. And the goal is to do the marathon, but that's usually not the end point for them. They might do another marathon, right? So goals have an end date, whereas like, Elliot, I love that. I only run if I'm being chased. I was telling my colleagues before everyone hopped on the call that like in fight, flight, or freeze, that I'm a flighter. Like I will run if I feel like I'm in danger, but I'm the same way. I won't run any other time. Today
And
being an
I'm
example.
I'm a fighter. I run to danger for whatever reason.
I'm not surprised to hear that, but like,
I'm
and I'd be
not
running the other direction. So we should never be field partners ever. I'd be running the other
right.
direction.
She's going, I'm running to where I'm like, partner, where did you go? You left me up there.
Yeah, and I'm sure everyone could also, when you've been in like those high stress situations, you kind of know maybe where you fall. Some people freeze, right? Like we all kind of have our own like coping mechanism when we're in our survival mode. But so success planning conversations being focused on like very small changes and like 1% changes that you might not see the result right away, which I think for people in our field is really hard. But we like to use the example, and I don't know if I shared this with you guys. There's a lot of different examples we could use. We could use like a butterfly. And you have this caterpillar that goes into this cocoon and we can't see what's happening in this cocoon, right? Like we're looking at this ugly cocoon hanging from wherever and we're like, what's going on in there? And then all of a sudden like this beautiful butterfly comes out. But like that the butterfly is like the outcome of all that it went through in that cocoon, like its journey to becoming a butterfly. Same with an ice cube. An ice cube is going to stay an ice cube until it hits 32 degrees and it's going to melt. But guess what? If it hits 30 degrees again, it's going to freeze again. So like it's dynamic in that, it still can go back, like it still can go back to its original form. And so can we as humans, right? Like we might have a period in our time where in our life, in our journey where we're doing really well, like our mental health is good, but then a year later, something happens and like we're in a very different place. And as humans, we are super dynamic. And so I think it's unrealistic to say or to think that when we work with people that the trajectory is always going to be going up. I think we have to be realistic in thinking that it's more like a roller coaster or a ball of yarn that's like tangled up and like we're just trying to unravel it a little bit or get a couple knots out. Right? Like human behavior is hard to change and like I think we just can't expect that we can do everything in the time that we have people. And so how do we make more realistic expectations for the people we serve, but also for ourselves as coaches and trying to help people to kind of take a step forward in their journey? So we talk about success planning, we talk about figuring out who they want to become, and then we start having the conversations of like, what does this look like? Like, how can we take small steps to get there? Then we design the roadmap or the success plan. I like to think of it as a map or a journey, something that again is not linear, but where you can take steps forward, steps back, how we address those. And make sure that it's like relevant to the person you're serving, whether it's a staff member or someone on supervision, and then figuring out and working with in partnership, figuring out how you're going to track progress. How are you going to track mistakes and like, how are you going to address mistakes? What does that look like? And again, we see mistakes as opportunities for learning and growth. And so, those are learning moments. And as a coach, like, that's a huge part of your job, is to help teach people in those moments where, they might be struggling. So I think it's much different. And I would also say around the assessment piece, different from case planning, is we want assessments important, like having a risk assessment, but we want people to take the time to understand your staff, the people they serve, as a whole person. So not just what their risk is, not just what they're good at or they're not good at, but who are they? Who, where do they associate in their life with different groups of people or different hobbies, or just who they are, what they enjoy doing. Just giving insight into assessing someone as a whole human being and not the worst mistake that they did. I think a lot of times, like, we think about people with mental health issues, and we're like, that's what we think of them as, like a mentally ill person. Like, no, that's only one facet of who they are. And so, like, how can we create, when we see so many horrible things every day and it's reinforced, how can we still see people as whole human beings and all the goodness and worth that they bring to the space, just being human, but then all the other things that make them uniquely human in themselves. So I think those are my thoughts on it. We'll play the success planning video. Tamika, do you have anything to add? Kelly, Amanda?
Yeah, I was definitely going to say something around assessment too. We also have to remember too that assessments can hold bias, and that assessments are often built based off of a certain demographic, and it may not highlight everyone's experiences or how they experience the world. So assessments are a good tool to use to try to understand, the risk, the needs, but that can't be the only thing we use to determine who this individual is, right? It can be a point in time in their life and it can give us insight, but building a plan with them, asking, thoughtful questions, trying to understand how they show up and what that journey looked like for them along the way that put them in this situation has to be acknowledged. And a lot of times when we get into this space, like if you don't have a research background, you're not really thinking in a way when you're looking at an assessment and whether the assessment holds bias. They do, right? Because there's certain individuals who create assessments. There are certain, questions that are asked that may not even be culturally responsive to the people who are being assessed. And are we responsible for that? Not necessarily, but as a coach, you do take a lens like, let me not rely solely on this document, right? Let me look at other facets in this person's life that might contribute to how they ended up in my office today. And that's where we start to build the plan. That's how we start to build the connection. And we use that as a tool and not the end all be all, right? It's just one piece of the puzzle that we're building as we're building this roadmap to success. And I'll go ahead and play the video for you guys. And I think you may have seen it, but we always think you can't see this stuff too many times, just to make sure that it's reinforcing some of the things that we've talked about, so you can better explain this to your staff and role model it for them as well.
Once the initial assessment process has been wrapped up and the results shared with the person on supervision, we'll want to work together to build a plan that helps the person be successful. In the next series of microskills videos, we will shift from the traditional case plan or supervision plan to a success plan. The change to a success plan is not a change just in name alone. We think getting someone to work on their success plan definitely sounds more engaging than completing a case plan. But the change also helps us think of new ways to restructure the plan. The plan now centers on progress and helps the person on supervision tie the strategies and interventions they're learning to help them move towards their best self. Many of you have a case plan or supervision plan already in place for the people on your caseload. The plans are usually pretty technical and include standard language like goals, objectives, and techniques. We've been trained to target specific assessment domains based on a person's risk level. This generally translates to creating a goal and a few objectives under each of the higher risk domains, but it doesn't consider how the assessment domains affect one another. Let's take substance use as a target. How many people on supervision have an identified need around their substance use, but also have some level of need with peers and employment? The reality is that we have to treat the whole person, not split each areas of need into separate domains. The success plan helps staff think about a person holistically to build an integrated plan that improves skills, reduces barriers, and measures progress. The other key element that the success plan focuses on is translating and connecting planned interventions with measuring a person's progress towards their best self. Community supervision officers and people on supervision are encouraged to track their progress together and connect it to the hard work they do. For some, the success plan will replace their current practice, and for others, they might have to integrate the plan into their existing structure. The hope is that organizations will start to adopt this more inclusive way of tracking progress for people on supervision. Even if your agency doesn't shift to using a success plan, we've given you ways to operate within your existing case plan structure while adhering to the core components of the success plan. Ultimately, the success plan is for the person on supervision, so we want to ensure it's responsive to their needs and strengths and developed on their picture of success.
Awesome. Before we move forward, because we're gonna do an activity that I talked to you about earlier. Does anybody have any questions? Did that kind of refresh your memory around success planning? And can I get one key takeaway from what you've heard thus far around success planning and how you could use it or are currently using it in some form or fashion? You can either post it in chat or come off and talk to me. Like, is there one key takeaway of the value of success planning?
Can we stop sharing?
Absolutely.
Sorry, I'm a pain.
So
Yeah, you
I
are.
have a question.
Mhm.
So is the idea that a success plan would replace a case plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but we know there's a caveat. We know that in a lot of jurisdictions, there's case plans are approved, at different levels, or maybe you contract with the feds and they need you to do X, Y, and Z. And so what we say is if it can't be replaced, that it's at least a supplement to what you're doing. And we think of the case plan as more being like what you're being asked to do from the conditions or whoever your governing authority is, like almost like a case plan for the officer of like kind of the roadmap of things they need to accomplish based on bureaucracy and the conditions that we know are there. And the success plan is more rooted and grounded in what a person is trying to accomplish on their journey and who they're desiring to be, which is it's two different things.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of noticing. I'm noticing a case plan is seems to be strictly based on court conditions and risk and need assessment. And what I'm hearing a lot about this success plan is it's more revolved around the person and deeper as an individual. And
Right.
I don't know if like our department, for example, would replace the one, but it might be something that we would create an addition to. And I'm not sure. That's just something I'll have to figure out. But
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we recognize that too, Tim. Because different counties and states have spent money and funding around certain aspects, and it's tied to what the expectations are around the job from a technical standpoint. And some people use case planning to goal plan as well, but it's definitely to me not as robust and consistent as like a success plan, and it doesn't include the person on supervision. It's like you do this case plan, you give it to them, and what they do with it, we'll never know, right? We're like, oh, okay, I think I'm supposed to do all this. But when they're invested and they're a part of building a plan for themselves, they're more likely to hold on to it. We did success planning with an agency in Virginia, and we allowed the person on supervision to create their own roadmap, and they created a brain because like they had like their brain and something that they wanted to accomplish. So they drew that out and they carried it around with them. And so as they were making progress, they had that kind of success plan with them so they could it will remind them on what they're trying to accomplish and where they're trying to go and where they started, which is completely different from how you approach a case plan. And so we recognize that maybe you can't completely do an overhaul with the approach to the case plan, but using some of this as a method to supplement, like Rachel said, could really impact the way people see supervision from a coaching perspective.
Well, and like if you pulled a lot of our case plans, like you said earlier, they're going to look a lot alike. You know, it might not
right,
always
because it has the
be-
criminogenic needs and then what you're going to do to address it, right?
Yes,
Like the
like
goals. Yeah.
if you find an individual that is this and got the same levels of high risk, their
Mhm.
case plan is going to be almost mirrored.
Right. So it's not really individualized most to the person, and they're not really a part of it. Like they completed the assessment, they told us whatever they wanted to tell us, but they were not a part of what they're saying is their strength and how they show up and what are barriers in their life that is like integrated in how they move forward and what keeps them from moving forward. So it's just like a different way of looking at the person, but you can still use the case plan. Like it's still there as a frame and a guide, but it's not tailored to the individual. And Lori, you talked about, you said you guys use a community plan. Can you talk about your community plan and what that looks like?
So we have like so throughout the client's placement, each week when they meet with their caseworker, they develop an individual program plan, and it looks at their risk levels, and if they score like moderate or high risk in any risk level, the caseworker is required to set a goal in that area. So then when it comes to the community plan, you can kind of extend it out towards more like, so the IPP is the one they use during their placement with our program, but then about 3 weeks before they're released, they do the community plan with their caseworker, and they can set goals a little farther out. So, 6 months down the road, a year down the road, just kind of giving them that roadmap to success. And then that community plan, they get a copy of it, obviously, and then it also gets sent to their parole or probation officer so that they have a copy of it as well.
Right. And let me ask you something about the goals. Are the goals predetermined based off the risk that was flat? Okay. So they determine what that goal is for them. Now,
Right.
is it tied strictly to something relative to supervision or, okay, great. Okay. Awesome.
No, so they can look at anything from, something with their, family, if they, have messed up relationships. It can be anything from there, and you just kind of talk them through. So, how do you want to see yourself with your family in 6 months, and how are you going to get there, and those things like that. So
And
no, it's not just supervision.
okay, great. And is that does that guide the conversation every time they interact or meet with the person? Or is it just like a living document and you refer back to it from time to time?
The one that they do during their placement is a living document that every week you're opening and revising and putting completion dates and adding new things the whole time that they're here. The community plan is more, this is yours to take with you and to keep going with, kind of thing.
Okay. Okay.
Lori, are people like excited about it, or is it like one more thing they have to do? People on supervision.
So when they leave us, I'm not really sure how they feel about it. I think, when they're developing it with their caseworker, I think they enjoy it because they just see like, oh my gosh, I have like 2 weeks and I'm almost done, and this is the last time we have to do these, these program plans. And I think it kind of lifts them up a little bit. I would hope.
Right. And imagine having something like that every time a person was on supervision, like their own probation supervision, and being able to have that excitement to see how far they've moved along their roadmap. Like what else have they checked off as their mile marker or their achievement? And they can visually see like, wow, I used to use every day. Right now, I only use once, and people might say, "Oh my God, you're still using," but no, that is a huge accomplishment for someone who is on the road to recovery. Right? That's
And that goes to Jason's
celebrate
comment.
that.
I just want to elevate what
Yes,
Jason's saying in the chat
absolutely.
around the activation of dopamine when they get to celebrate like some progress that they've made, even
Yes.
if they're not to like maybe their goal is to be sober. Well, you know, that's not going to happen overnight, but if they can see and celebrate those kind of small wins of like that vote for who they're trying to become, you're right that like that's like not just internally in their brain, but then they have a coach or like their officer who's supporting them and they see that as like a partnership of that person helping them through that process. That also reinforces it. It's like a double reinforcement, which is really cool.
And it forces you to celebrate the small wins. We always look at celebrating the big wins. We graduated from drug treatment court. We successfully completed treatment. We successfully completed one component of it. I got my GED. But those are like really huge milestones in people's journey, right? Well, why not celebrate? Man, you went to class 5 times this month, right? Or, 4 times this week, depending on what the expectations are, and celebrate that. And that's what that success plan really does, is it forces you to come in and say, hey man, look at what you did. Right? You went to class multiple times. Not only did you do that, you're working on your GED and you come this far and you got your license. And these are small wins that give you a sense of pride, a sense of empowerment to say, I can keep doing it. And even if you don't do everything right, we'll come back to the drawing board and we'll pick a new play. We'll think about what else we can do to better support you, because that's what a coach does. A referee would immediately throw the flag. As soon as you come back, you could have been clean for 29 days that month. Instead, 30th day you tested positive, the flag is going to be thrown and there's going to be some sanction. That's a referee. A coach is like, okay, depending on your department, is like, okay, you've been clean this far. I'm going to advocate for you. I'm going to say, hey, you've been doing good. So can we just give them a chance? Let's talk to the treatment provider and see what else we can do to wrap services around instead of throwing the flag and trying to sanction. Like, that's the difference,
Tamika, I was thinking about what you said. Like, we, in our case plans, and Tim, Tim would know this, like, we try to really not just do what the court says, hey, you got to get this done, but also we want their input. We ask like, hey, what do you want to accomplish while you're on this? And we really try to add those into our case plans too. So they're not just like the, hey, yeah, we know we got this element of it that has to get done, that's court appointed. And then, but then what do you want to do too? Like, it kind of gives them, it's like, it shows like, hey, those elements that are required, but also the ones that you want to. And I think a lot of it, it helps them to kind of get buy-in for us. You know what I mean? Plus we also have these incentive cards that we give. And you can see, it gives like, we put their names on it. So when they do up to so many things on there, we can check those off. We put them in a drawing for a gift card. And that's one of the things that, Tim and my departments do. And I gotta say, my guy just won this last month for February. So,
yeah,
I know. So it's like, it's good because we can celebrate with them too. And so I gave him that gift card. I was like, hey, James, like, you won, man. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, you remember that thing I told you, the incentive card thing where you did all these positive things and then I put you in for a drawing. I was like, well, I put you in for a drawing. He's like, I didn't even know you did. And I was like, yeah, and you got a gift card, man. And I put in 6 people and you got one and you're the one that's drawn. And he's like, dude, that made my day. And like, he was having a really rough day. So it was like, that was a positive. And I get, like the element of success plan versus case plan, but we really try to, like add both elements and and we incentivize and we do all those things and celebrate those things because we understand how important it is in our department.
That is awesome, Jason. And
that is, Jason, what's on that card? Like, what types, like, what do they have? Give some examples of like what people need to do to get the checkbox.
Well, and here's the thing. So we jokingly say that officers can kind of like fudge things on there, but one of the top things is arrived on time for scheduled appointment. And then completed assigned tasks between sessions, attended appointments with outside agencies, attended in-house programs, completed homework, submitted documentation, appropriately participated in the session. Hey, you're paying your fees, and then it gives us this other one. So if they passed a drug screen, or they, they're just, hey, like I did one time because one of my girls, she was doing all her DCS stuff, and I'm like, you're doing an awesome job as a mom. Like you're just blowing it up as a mom, and you're just doing all these awesome things. So I'm gonna, I put that on there. And really, I'm like, I don't think my supervisor are gonna get upset with me for like saying, you're a great mom. They're gonna be like, yeah, like, obviously you're not going to mark all of those as you're a good mom, but like, that other column gives us that flexibility to just be like, hey, that's a pro-social thing that we can definitely highlight with you. And so we mark those, and really, if you wanted to, you could technically find 5 good things to do every week with that client to get them into the drawing for that.
So Jason, I love that. What I would just like some things to think about, like think about what you're reinforcing. So a lot of those were tied to like things that were like condition oriented, right? Like get your, go to treatment or pay your fines or get your documentation in. And so in the success plan, like what would be really cool is if to have those incentive cards, but they were more focused on behavior like or decisions that they made in a week that again, weren't focused on an end goal or like they did it or they didn't do it, but rather like, so for example, if you're working with someone on trying to make their drug use less attractive or like less accessible to them. So maybe something they're trying to do is get rid of all their spoons because they like, that's what they burn their heroin on. Like, and so that's a cue for them. And so maybe like you're actually reinforcing that they were able to get rid of those spoons and only use plastic spoons or like wooden, things that wouldn't burn. And that might be something then you're reinforcing in an incentive card. That's again, something that's a small change that like they're doing to make using less like that. There's a smaller percentage that it will happen. Right? Like, because like reinforcing the negative drug test, although that's great, there's nothing wrong with that. But that doesn't mean the next time they show up that it's going to be negative and then what, right? Like that they're going to feel like a failure. We don't want people to feel like they're failing when they're making progress on a journey. They will fail. They will make mistakes. But so like, how do we start reinforcing things that are helping them get to who they're desiring to be, which is much different than checking boxes that are condition related. Because those things are there to try to help, like, to almost like referee rules, like, okay, like, yeah, we throw the whistle, we blow the whistle if you don't do it, if you do it, that's great. And we'll recognize it, which I think is really important. But I think what we reinforce is really important. And I don't know if Kelly and Amanda, you have other examples of what we could reinforce that's like helping the trajectory of like that progress, that's not necessarily related to conditions. I know I'm putting you on the spot. I'm just like not thinking of much like in the moment, which is probably my fried brain.
Well, I think the challenge with coming up with things in this kind of context is that we're trying to individualize things, and coming up with a list of items on a card that's pre-printed kind of defeats that a little bit. What would be cool is, as we're doing a success plan, we say to that person, what are 5 things you'd like to see yourself doing towards your success plan in the next couple of weeks or next month or whatever? And then those actually become the items that they can get the cards for. So you almost negotiate it while you're doing their success plan.
I love that.
Because they're a part of the process, and it's reinforcing their behaviors. It's reinforcing what they decided that they wanted to do. That's still going to get them closer to being successful on supervision, but help change those behaviors that's empowered by them themselves.
I think the thing that's usually I found doing that kind of stuff with clients is they often come up with the very same things that I would be putting on the card. but there's more of that buy-in and ownership by kind of inviting them to identify what do they think they need to do. Let's say they're working towards, you know, getting a better relationship with their kid, or doing, like you said, their Department of Social Services case plan or whatever. They'll often say, well, I probably need to go to that, see that counselor, or I need to, right? You know, and then, you know, there's a little bit more incentive for them to do things that they actually identified that they thought they should do.
Absolutely.
I also wanted to, you were talking earlier about, you know, measuring progress. And I was in another county, actually Amanda and I were doing an evaluation, and I was in a courtroom during a status review, and the person on supervision had a positive drug screen. And certainly that's an area of concern, right? That's part of what this person's on supervision for, and you know, an area of concern. The first thing this judge said to that person is, you had you know, 4 things you were responsible for between now and the last time we met, and you did 3 out of 4 of those things, and I want to congratulate you for that. Right? And so it was like, I'm going to see you as a whole person. I'm not only going to say, oh, you screwed up and you got high this month, right? I'm going to say you did some of the things that we're asking you to do, and we still have some room to work with this one, right? And so it feels much more affirming to the person that it's in the context, right? That I'm not a failure, as you guys were saying, that I'm making progress in a lot of ways, and I'm needing more attention to this way or whatever. Yeah. So just wanted to share that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kelly. All right. So we know we don't have a lot of time, and I do want to give you guys some practice time. So the first activity, if you look at your book, I'm going to share my screen right fast just so we can talk through it for our activity. Is we want you to kind of go through the success plan for you. And we intentionally do not give you any guidance around what success looks like for you. It could be at any moment, any point in your time and journey in life. It could be now, it could be in the future, but what does success look like for you? And then we want you to think about and describe where you currently are. And then describe obstacles that may have been in your way or that you've encountered along your way to getting to where you want to be. So like Rachel gave a great example around weight loss. We're all over here trying to lose weight at JSP, including myself. And I struggle as well with like my eating habits. And so how can I get to my healthiest self, right? What does that look like for me? And what barriers have I encountered along the way? And then how do I overcome them? How did I overcome them? Depending on how you approach the scenario. But what we want you to do is just practice and reflect on you and your journey as an individual and what success looks like for you. And then we're going to come back and just kind of talk a little bit about that and how we can help walk staff through this same process. So we're going to give you, I think, around, what did we say, Rachel, around 10 minutes? Since we were all, I think we...
Yeah, are people doing this on their own, Tamika?
Yes, so we will cut cameras off, and then they'll have 10 minutes to kind of go through and answer these 4 questions. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Just think through what you want to say, and then we'll talk about. We have a few probing questions, and we may have to end there and give you an activity to do on your own because we have a scenario if we run out of time at this discussion. Okay. So does anybody have any questions about that? So you've seen the success plan overview video. Now we just want you to answer these questions based off of your journey and where you see yourself. Okay. And then we'll come back and talk. So it's 4:11 here. I think it's 3:11 where Rachel is, and I'm not sure if we end at 4:30. Well, at the 30 mark.
Yeah, we do.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, can we stop sharing for this?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
so annoying. I'm like a broken record.
You really are. But I do, before we have them present, I want to show them the rest of the
Oh, the scenario. Okay,
so we can just end on a conversation.
cool.
But I get it. I do like seeing everybody's face too. So, all right, everybody, are you back? Let's see. I can see some people. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's see. What did you guys? Well, I'm sorry. No, I'm going to share my screen here for a moment and just tell you that there's some time for you to think about after we're going to end on a discussion today based off of your processing and reflecting on the activity. But you have an opportunity to have another reflection exercise here that you can just kind of think through, you know, and self-reflect on your own journey and then how you can incorporate this with your staff. We have another process called investment planning that is also similar to success planning that supervisors can work with staff. We haven't introduced that yet on the platform, but we have built that into this frame as well. So just think about what does that look like? And then there's a few probing questions here for you. And then there's a scenario. So in your learning teams, there's a scenario that we provide you. And then we have some instructions on a role play activity that you can do in your learning teams. And we provide you some kind of probing questions. And then we also provide you with just an example roadmap. And it was in your last success plan template as well. But this is just one we designed to think about. You can adopt it, you can take it, you can use it, whatever you like. Or you can have the person on supervision, or you can have your staff, you know, create their own as you're training them how to use this with the people that they serve. Okay. So I just wanted to show that before we went into our discussion. And let me know if you have any questions in the meantime as we're going through this. So based off of the reflective prompts, how did that feel? What did that feel like to have to think about what does success look like for you? And just thinking through like your journey. Elliot, you seem just like an amazing person to talk to.
Oh, why? Thank you. It was a little challenging. I can't lie. You know, it was a little challenging at first because I was trying to think of like, well, you know, in what facet, like, what do I want to focus on while I'm answering this? For lack of a better term, I went with the weight loss thing, right? Because I figured that would be simple enough. You know, I'm a little bit bigger. We have our whole company health plan or whatever. So, yeah, that was my first hurdle to overcome, was figuring out what do I want to look at, what do I want to hone in on and say, this is what it would look like for me to be successful achieving this goal. Mm-hmm. So as far as describing what success looks like to me, you know, I put drop 20 pounds, feel better, you know, breathe like I'm in Colorado.
That is hilarious, Elliot. Right. I love that. But it's supposed to be challenging, right? So oftentimes in these processes, what do we see happen? You're given, like when you think about epics, you're given a role play, you're given a map. If anybody that's familiar with epics, then you're supposed to go through and check all of these boxes. So guess what? Here's another way to check boxes about our life, right? But that is what is so different about success planning. You can decide whatever you want of what success looks like for you, in what day and in what area and what facet and what domain, right, that you want to look at. And right, where you can do as many as you want to. It's completely up to you, Tim, and where you see yourself. Is how you perceive the question, because it's individualized and tailored to you. And oftentimes that's very difficult because we usually get a frame to work within, right? But guess what? Life doesn't give us a frame to work within. Success could look totally different. Today, success looks like not going to sleep. Because I didn't sleep last night. That's what success looks like. So for me to overcome that is stay awake, attend my meeting, chat Rachel in the middle of the day to say, hey, I'm up, right? Remind me, what am I doing today? That's what success looks like for me today, but it could change. And some people, yes, they think about it in long term, you know, where they want to see themselves. Some people might show up in a short term, and that's okay as long as we're moving toward our desired self. Tim, go ahead. Did you want to
Can I comment too?
Oh, yeah.
I think Elliot, you're like, when you were talking about it was hard to even like figure out where, like, okay, we said, what does success mean to you? But like, in what facet of your life? And so I think we have to remember, like, as humans, there's probably a whole host of areas. I could list off probably 10 things right now that I'm like, shit, I got to be better at. Like, I'm failing here or not doing, like, not happy at where I'm at. And so think about the people we serve and like all of the things they feel like they've failed at in life or didn't have support, and like they just feel like colossal failures. I think like a huge part of success planning is actually restoring hope, because it's this sense of like, we don't expect you to be this person tomorrow, but rather like, we're going to partner with you in this journey to help you get 5 steps closer. It doesn't mean we're going to get there. We might even not get to see and celebrate like the end goal. But so I think you're right. Like, and also is people, whether you're supervising staff or people on supervision, it's unrealistic to say we're going to fix these 10 things, Rachel, right now. Like, if you said that to me, I'd be like, you're overwhelming me already just with this conversation. And so then how do you give them the autonomy to say, this is where I want to start? Like, this is what I think is most important. Again, giving the autonomy to choose and say, this is where I feel like I need to start. And then hopefully that will domino into these other areas. But really allowing people to kind of dictate what their journey is going to be and how we partner with them. And restoring hope. And we do that by celebrating those small wins. Or maybe they did 5 shitty things, but they did one great thing. And we're going to focus on that one amazing thing they did to say like, wow, like really awesome. And that's hard to do because like, usually we have our stupid little checklists. Like, we got to do, well, you didn't do that, fail. Like, and that's just not really, we don't work like that as humans. That's just not the way our system is designed. It's like you do it or you don't. But when you think about as humans how we function, that's not how we work. We're a work in progress, and like tomorrow we're just trying to be better, or tomorrow we're just trying to survive, right? Like, we're all in different places, but I think a lot of times we have so many things that we're liable for or supposed to do that we actually forget that like that's not how human nature and behavior really works. And so this process is about grounding us and taking steps alongside of people, not to say that like I'm above you and like I'm going to help you get there because I know how to do it because I'm a pro-social human. Like, no, you do a lot of things behind closed doors that if I saw you, I would judge you. Or anybody would, right? Like, let's be honest. If we were all known for our worst mistakes, we would all be like hiding and our cameras would be off. Kelly and Lori, I see you. No, kidding. So anyway, I appreciate that.
Does anybody else want to share maybe what their desired self was and what supports they need to get there? Because I think, Elliot kind of talked about, just where he sees himself and like that, like the goal of getting there. But like, what do you need? What supports do you need to get to your desired self? What does that look like? Does anybody want to share before we get off today?
Well, for me and the whole weight loss goal, like see a nutritionist, get, some insight onto, my eating habits. One of the big obstacles, barriers that I put out there was I love sugar. I don't know if anybody can tell, but I really like candy and bread and stuff like that. Doesn't help that my wife just started her sourdough journey, so now we have like sourdough everything.
Send
But
some my way.
Gladly. but yeah, just you know, certain things, reaching out for that support and stuff like that. Like that was one of the things that I identified as being helpful, would be like, you know, support from my significant other. You know, just trying to, you know, because who among us doesn't have that night where they're like, ah, I don't really feel like cooking, we should just go get something. And then you're like, but no, you still have, you're an adult, you have to make that, you know, we have food at home argument with yourself. But anyways, with that being said, yeah, those are some of the things that I saw as being able to help me with achieving said goal.
Right. No, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Elliot, because you need that. And when you say support, like that support is a level of accountability, right? Like in my on my weight loss journey, I have accountability partners. And it's not accountability to throw the flag at me. It's the accountability to say, I'm here with you. Like I'm working out too. Did you show up today? Because I showed up today. And that makes me want to be like I want to be like I don't want to disappoint my accountability partner, right? And when we think about accountability when it comes to being a probation officer or a reentry officer, whatever your role is, case manager, we're always thinking that it's a gotcha, throwing the flag, when instead it's really like, man, let me just help walk beside one step at a time and show support. And yeah, I'm gonna call you out, Tamika. You ate a cheeseburger today. Let's try not to do that tomorrow. Right? You know, and that's one step along our journey. But thank you guys. We're over time and we definitely don't want to keep you over our allotted time, but thank you for engaging with us today. Let us know if you have any questions around the activity, or if you want to have a sidebar conversation around the scenario. We definitely can talk with you through that. And thank you so much for being here with us today and for all the work that you